Next book of the day I'm going to read is Pete and Pickles by Berkeley Breathed, which is a prize-winning creator of the book and author called Opus. So here we go, Pete and Pickles. For Sophie and Milo. Pete was a perfectly predictable pig. He was also a perfectly practical pig and a perfectly uncomplicated pig. Being all those perfect things, Pete might have run for the hills if he had known what was coming that night. Look at that. He's vacuuming at like a gravesite. That goofy pig. The storm arrived first. Pete cut the evening's fun off early and went to bed to get the nightmare out of the way. The same terrifying, watery nightmare all pigs dream during stormy nights. For pigs are known for doing only one thing well in water: drowning. And that is exactly what Pete dreamt he was doing when a sudden sound woke him. The window was open. Pete pulled the lamp switch. Nothing happened. He had an odd feeling. Pigs are very smart in this way. That something was a little wrong. Pete was suddenly grabbed, hugged, really, by a wet nose, at the other end of which was a wet elephant. The beast whispered, "Shh." She said nothing else, but her eyes spoke clearly. "Help me." Then a knock at the door, and notice right there on the elephant's ear, it's got a number, a tag number, which often happens to animals that where there's too many, people say they own them, but it's not a name, they're a number. At the door, a clown asked Pete if he'd seen any sign of an escaped elephant named Pickles. That's right, Addison. Pickles. There! Under the couch! Look carefully, Pete said, as the circus man led the sad, slumping elephant away. Pete was startled when she looked back at him and smiled. Nice try, little elephant, or big elephant. You can see his little chain on his foot. Aw, or she. The next morning, Pete was disinfecting his house when he noticed his midnight visitor had left behind a gift. Dandelions. Oh, how thoughtful. How ridiculous, thought Pete as he scrubbed. Well, that afternoon, Pete took his usual short stroll. He looked down at the evening mist rolling in and saw a circus tent. He looked down at the dandelion. Ridiculous, he muttered. Today, however, Pete would take a longer walk. He soon found himself amidst the circus tents, watching a long nose plucking every dandelion within reach. Pete knew that nose, and it knew him. It plucked Pete's hat and disappeared. Seconds before Pete called the police, his hat was pushed back out. Improved. Aw. Love that elephant. It's kind. Pete looked in to see Pickles sitting in a very dark corner of a very dark tent, wearing a very locked chain. Pete suddenly, unexplainably, found himself reaching for the key. Poor elephant. Look at his face. She's so sad. Now free and outside, Pickles dove to hide, while a panic Pete whispered, "Tea was on my schedule today, not elephants." Being a practical pig, however, he knew they needed a disguise. Something, anything. Pete thought fast. It worked too well. A policeman suggested dinner. They reached Pete's house by nightfall. A weary Pickles retired after making herself comfortable in a pair of Pete's favorite pajamas. Understand this. You have not heard snoring until you have had an elephant nap on your couch. Pete was a perfectly unpleased pig. Tomorrow, he thought, the pig girl leaves. Pete awoke the next day to find Pickles doing a little morning Tai Chi, as if she were in China, which she certainly was not. Oh, look at that perfectly rowed garden. And you can, looks like, if you don't know what Tai Chi is, you can kind of notice the elephant doing a little bit of stretching or dance, almost like yoga. On the other hand, Pete noted that his house guest had made a few changes to the grounds. This time Pete did not say ridiculous. It's quite impressive. Beautiful. If you've ever driven by like a graveyard or something like that, we like to plant flowers and put things out to honor people we love. And look at that. Look at those beautiful flowers. Later that morning, Pete experienced the goosebumpy joy of a back scrubbing with his newspaper and coffee. He also discovered the limits of his bathtub. Pickles showed Pete a magazine article about high diving. She pointed to both of them. "Ridiculous," Pete said. "Pigs and elephants sink like bricks." Pickles smiled. After lunch, they would swan dive off Niagara Falls. And they did. Sort of. That's hilarious. Jumping out of a fountain. On Tuesday, they sledded down the Matterhorn in Switzerland. Sort of. Pete was learning that Pickles had lots of plans, which included a lot of great ideas, or at least they looked fun, don't they? Look at Pete's ears on that sled. On Sunday, they went to Tahiti for brunch. Pickles, as always, shared her tropical refreshment with the natives. If you notice in the picture, the natives are all the other homeless or stray animals around. Again, more evidence that Pickles is such a thoughtful creature, elephant friend. After Paris, it was on to the lazy canals of Venice. Pete did not know any romantic Italian songs, which did not stop him from singing them. Pickles sniffed a fragrant Venetian lily and shared it with Pete in a manner nicely suited for elephants and pigs. It was when Pete returned home one evening and found ballet tryouts in Moscow, soaring paracows over Tuscany, and house painters on his roof, that his thoughts turned to his earlier life. Man, I'm getting a big text-to-text connection, thinking about some bear. What should this remind us of? Which other book of the day? A less complicated life, then, thought Pete. Wow, same thoughts as that bear that I'm talking about. Soon after, Pete discovered Pickles getting into things she wouldn't have been in. He snapped. I am a predictable, practical, uncomplicated pig, or I was before, he yelled. As a shocked Pickles fell back into the bathtub, the last words she remembered hearing were the worst. It's time you probably left. Oh, look at Pickles' face. Again, kind of reminds me of that same bear, the same situation, the same problem. You thinking about that too? Something broke. A pipe gushed water in a spewing torrent. The house filled while a panicky Pete screamed, Pickles! The mop! Buckets! Sponges! Never mind. Head up for high ground. Pete worried that the high ground would run out. And as a matter of fact, look at Pete's face. It did. And when all the sounds and snows in the now flooded house were fully stretched to their furthest reach, only one had found the refuge of sweet air. Another perfect example of how selfless Pickles is. Pete clung tightly to the last open window. He looked back down into the face of one far too heavy to join him, and noticed, once again, as always, a smile. Another evidence. Pickles is such a good friend. Very selfless and kind. At that terrible moment, what occurred to Pete was not how his life had become so unpredictable, so unpractical, and so completely complicated with Pickles. No, what occurred to Pete was his life without her. That endless night would be the longest of all their great journeys. And when the fireman finally climbed to the window the next morning, he could not believe what he found. What do you think? A prediction here. What do you think? What do you find? He found a very small pig breathing for a very large elephant all night long, every hour, every minute, every breath shared. When they finally emptied the house, the firemen looked down in puzzlement at the exhausted pair of sleeping friends. They tried, but could not pull Pete from the mighty grasp of Pickles. And so the two slept all day, through the night and on until morning. Now I see great traits in Pete here. Think how Pete was at the beginning of the story. He has definitely proven he's changed. How did he change? What do you think caused Pete to change and to make that choice to help Pickles? When they awoke to pick blueberries on the dandelion moons of Pluto, Pete sang Italian love songs. That is hilarious. On a scooter. The end. So think about the growth of the friendship of these two crazy, unlikely friends, an elephant and a pig. And think about the whole time we know Pickles has these traits that we identify very quickly. And we kind of see Pete's traits at the beginning, but then look, he's changed. We see what are two different ways that Pete changed throughout this story. Talk to you guys later. Pete and Pickles.